Why do we always look for a bad guy in every story? Why are we obsessed with hunting for a villain? A single face of evil to blame for our chaos. But here's the truth you weren't told. In the oldest, most powerful belief systems across Africa, the throne of the devil is empty. For centuries, the West has tried to force these complex, ancient deities into a box they were never meant to fit, branding them as monsters just to survive a foreign narrative. The truth isn't just different, it's much more dangerous. It's a world where good and evil don't exist as warring sides, but as a brutal, fluid reality. And once you see it, the Western story of the battle for soul starts to look like a lie. Now, think about this for a second. Every major religion you've been handed has a villain: Satan, Iblis, Ahriman, the adversary, the one who fell. The story doesn't quite work without him. Humanity's suffering needs an author. Our failures need a scapegoat. We built entire civilizations on the architecture of a cosmic battle between light and darkness, good and evil, God and the devil. It's so deeply embedded in how we think that we can't even imagine a belief system without it. And yet, here's what keeps me up at night. Some of the oldest, most sophisticated theological systems in human history, systems that predate Christianity and Islam by thousands of years, did not need one. Not because they were primitive, but because they understood something about the nature of existence that we, with all our modernity, might have forgotten. And here is what I think makes this even stranger, because when European missionaries arrived on the African continent, not just with Bibles, but with armies, with chains, with an entire machinery of cultural erasure, they didn't just find people who believed differently. They found people whose gods did not fit the story they were selling. And a story that doesn't have a devil, that's a problem. Why? Because if there was no devil, there is no sin in the way they defined it. If there is no sin, there is no need for salvation. And if there is no need for salvation, well, the entire justification for conquest starts to crack. So, what did they do? Well, they looked at the most powerful African deities, the crossroad gods, the tricksters, the shapeshifters, and they pointed and said, "There, that's one. That is your devil." And millions of people across Africa believed them. But let me tell you what those gods actually were, and why the truth is far more unsettling than any devil could ever be. Let's start with Eshu, or Elegba, or Legba. He goes by many names across the Yoruba and Fon traditions of West Africa. And that itself should tell you something. A being with many names is a being who cannot be pinned down. Eshu is the Orisha of the crossroads, of communication, of beginnings and endings. He is the one who stands at every doorway, every threshold, every moment of choice. You cannot speak to another Orisha god without going through him first. No prayer reaches the divine courts of the Orishas without Eshu's permission. No message travels between worlds unless he allows it. Now pause. Think about what that means. In Yoruba cosmology, which is one of the most complex and sophisticated theological systems ever developed by human beings, the being who stands at the intersection of all things is not a devil. He's not evil. He's not even the antagonist. He is the gatekeeper of possibility itself. And that is terrifying in a completely different way than Satan is terrifying. Satan is terrifying because he wants to destroy you. Eshu is terrifying because he might not even care. That distinction, I think, is everything. Eshu is known as a trickster. He plays pranks. He causes misunderstanding. There's a story I've heard, one of the oldest, about Eshu walking between two farmers who were friends. He wore a hat that was red on one side and black on the other. And when the farmers saw the hat from their different perspective, they argued about what color his hat was. And that shattered their friendship. And Eshu, well, he laughed. Not because he hated them, not because he was evil, but because the argument itself revealed something true about how fragile certainty is, about how two people can witness the same thing and come away with completely different realities. That is not Satan whispering lies into your ears. That is reality itself, wearing a heart and walking down the road, watching you destroy each other over your inability to admit you only saw half of the picture. And here is the twist that changes everything about this story. When the missionaries arrived and saw Eshu, this trickster with his crossroads, his tricks, his power over thresholds and fate, what they saw was different. They saw horns, They saw pitchfork energy. They saw a being who could disrupt, who laughed at certainty, who didn't obey a clear moral code, and they called him the devil. But think about what they were actually afraid of. They weren't afraid that Eshu was evil. They were afraid that he was free, a being who operates outside of good and evil, who exists in the space between, who answers to no moral authority. That is not just theologically dangerous, that is politically dangerous, because the same logic that says there is no cosmic devil is the same logic that says there is no cosmic authority demanding the submission. And submission was exactly what the colonial enterprise required. This is a moment where mythology stops being about God and starts being about power. And you need to understand that, because across the continent, this pattern repeats in the voodoo tradition, which emerged partly from the Fon and Iwi people of Dahomey, carried across the ocean in the holds of slave ships, surviving against every attempt to destroy it. You find the Elwa, spirits, forces, some of them terrifying, some of them loving, most of them both at once. Baron Samedi, the Elwal of death, is foul-mouthed, crude, drunk on rum, and he is also the only person who can heal the dying. He stands at the grave and laughs, not because death is funny, but because laughter is the only honest response to how absurd it is that we are alive at all. Is that evil, or is that a theological sophistication that Western Christianity never quite reached? And then there is Mami Water, the water spirit, half woman, half serpent. She appears across West and Central Africa, and she is beautiful and dangerous. She would bless you with wealth and beauty and destroy your marriage, drive you to madness and heal you, drown you and save you, all of it at once or none of it at all, depending on her mood. Her devotees know this. They enter into a relationship with her understanding the risk. There is no illusion of a benevolent God who only wants good things for you. There is a force, ancient, powerful, indifferent to your comfort, and you must negotiate with it honestly. And here's what I find most profound about this. It might be the most realistic theology ever invented, because that is exactly how the universe actually behaves. But I want us to stay with this because I think we are missing the deeper architecture here. The Yoruba cosmology doesn't just lack a devil. It has a fundamental different answer to the question of where evil comes from. In the Yoruba understanding, Olodumare, the supreme being, the source of all creation, is so vast, so absolute, so beyond human comprehension that he does not directly interact with the human world. He doesn't need to. He created the Orishas, the divine forces, each one governing a domain of existence. Shango, the Orisha of thunder and justice. Oya, the Orisha of storms and transformation. Ogun, the Orisha of iron, war and labor. Oshun, the Orisha of river and love and fertility. And each of these beings is not good or evil. Each of them is a force, enormous, capable of creation and destruction in equal measure. Shango will strike the wicked with lightning. He will also strike the innocent, because lightning doesn't check your moral records before it falls. And you know what? That may actually be true. Ogun will give you the iron you need to build the city, feed your children, protect your family. He will also give you the sword that takes a life. It's the same iron, the same God, the same force. The difference lives entirely in the hands that use it. And the Yoruba knew this. They built an entire theological system about the understanding that divine power is not moral. It is elemental, and the responsibility for how that power is used falls completely, mercilessly on human beings. That is not a comfortable theology. It's a terrifying one, because if there's no devil, there's no one to blame. If there's no cosmic adversary planting wickedness in your heart, then every act of cruelty you commit is yours, fully, without appeal. The Yoruba concept of Ori, your personal spiritual essence, the divine fragment carried within you, places the burden of your destiny and your choice squarely in your own hands, and the hands of the forces you cultivate a relationship with. You choose which Orisha to honor, you choose which energies to align yourself with. And if your life is a disaster, the conversation isn't with the devil, the conversation is with yourself, with your ancestors, with the forces you invited in. That's a level of personal accountability that most modern people would find unbearable. And here's what I keep circling back to. that has haunted me this whole time. The African theological imagination did not produce the idea of evil as an external invading force. It produced the idea of imbalance. Ashe, the divine energy that flows through all things, can't be aligned or misaligned. The person who does harm is not someone the devil guts to. They are someone who has broken alignment with the forces that sustain life. And the restoration is not about defeating an enemy. It's about restoring balance, about ceremony, about sacrifice. Not in the violent dramatic sense we imagine, but in the sense of deliberate exchange of honorary forces that hold the world together. And look at where we are in the world right now. Look at how we handle our crisis. We hunt villains. We find the one bad person, the one corrupt official, the one terrorist. We almost always need a face for the evil. We need a Satan because our entire civilizational architecture depends on the story of a world where good and evil are in constant battle. And if we can just defeat the villain, order will be restored. But the forces that are actually destabilizing the world, ecological collapse, structural inequality, the slow erosion of communal life, these don't have a single face. They are imbalances. They are the results of systems that have fallen out of alignment with the forces that sustain life. And we do not know how to fight that because we were never taught the theology of balance. We were only taught the theology of the cosmic battle. But hold on, because before we make African cosmology sound like a utopian paradise, I need to tell you about something darker. The Ifa divination system, the vast body of sacred text that governs Yoruba spiritual life, contains 256 Odu, or sacred signs. Each one is a universe of stories, warnings, prescriptions, and wisdom. Within those Odu are accounts of forces so destructive, so antithetical to human flourishing, that the diviners who work with them must undergo extraordinary protection just to speak their names. There are entities in the Yoruba cosmos that are not neutral. They are not simply elemental. They are Biku, the spirit who enters children and causes them to die young, repeatedly, just to torment their family through cycles of grief. They are not physiological abstractions. They are malevolent. There is something that functions like evil in this system, but, and this is the critical distinction, it is not organized. It is not a kingdom with a king. It is not a Satan on a throne commanding legions. It is scattered, specific, and manageable through knowledge and ceremony. The difference between a cosmic devil and dangerous spiritual forces is the difference between cancer and a single tumor. One is a total war for the soul of the universe. The other is something real, something that can harm you, something that requires skill and courage and wisdom to address, but something that does not define the fundamental nature of reality. The universe is not a battlefield. It is a complex living system, and within it there are forces that are hostile to human life, and they must be navigated carefully. But they are not the story. Balance is the story. Life is the story. And let me take you somewhere else entirely, because we haven't talked about East Africa yet. In the ancient Kemetic tradition, what we now call ancient Egypt, the closest thing to a devil figure is Set. And Set is fascinating because he is the patron of chaos, of deserts, of storms. He is the one who killed his brother Osiris, dismembered him, scattered his body across the land. He is, by any reasonable measure, a villain in the midst of Osiris and Horus, and yet Set was worshipped. Pharaohs took his name as part of their ritual titles. The Hyksos revived him. During the Ramesside period, he was considered one of the most powerful and important gods in the entire pantheon, because Set is not evil. Set is necessary. Chaos is necessary. The desert itself is necessary. The storm too is necessary. A world without Set is like a world that has lost its edge, its wideness, and a world like that becomes stagnant. It dies of order. There is something almost unbearably modern about the idea. We live in an age obsessed with safety and certainty, with sanitizing everything dangerous, with reducing risk to zero, and our world is becoming stagnant in exactly the way the Kemetic imagination warned us about. Order without chaos is not paradise, it's a comfortable tomb. But Set's story also reveals why the devil concept was so easy to import. Because there is a villain energy in Set. He does cause destruction, he does break things. And so when the early Christian monk in Egypt encountered his mythology, they reached for a familiar pattern. There is the evil one, there is the adversary. But they missed what the Egyptians understood, that the adversary and the enemy are not the same thing. Set is an adversary, a challenger, a force that tests and destroys, so that something stronger can emerge. He's not your enemy. He is not the resistance in your spiritual training. He is the weight that makes you stronger. And if you rob Set of his complexity, if you flatten him into just the devil, you lose the entire theological point. You lose the understanding that growth requires destruction, that transformation requires chaos, that the universe does not progress without the friction of opposing forces, and that friction is not a war between good and evil. It is the mechanism of creation itself. Now we are almost at the end, and I need to say something that might be uncomfortable. The real reason African mythology has no devil is not because African people were naive about evil. They were not naive. They lived with drought, with disease, with the terror of unpredictable nature, with wars and conquest and lust. They knew suffering intimately. The reason there is no devil is because they asked a different question. The Western theological imagination looked at suffering and asked, who did this? Who is responsible? Who is the enemy? Whereas the African theological imagination looked at suffering and asked, what is out of balance? What has been broken? What ceremony has been neglected? What relationship might have gone wrong? What relationship has gone unhonored? What force needs to be acknowledged? One question haunts a villain. The other question seeks restoration. And when I think about the centuries of colonial violence, the slave trade, the extraction, the cultural destruction, I wonder what it cost humanity to suppress the second question in favor of the first. Because we never stopped hunting villains. We never learned to ask what was out of balance. And here we are. There is something in the Yoruba concept of iwepele, gentle character, patient presence, that feels like the antidote to everything corroding the modern world. Not the defeat of evil, not the triumph of good, just the patient, daily, embodied practice of being in the right relationships with the forces that sustain life. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic. It doesn't make for a good movie, but it might be the only thing that actually works. The oldest theological systems on earth looked at the human condition and refused to simplify it into just a war. They said, the world is complex, the forces that govern it are vast and amoral. The responsibility for how you navigate them falls entirely on you, and the work is never finished. The work of balance, the work of ceremony, the work of relationships with something larger than yourself that does not love you in the simple way, but sustains you in a profound one. And then someone came along with a simpler story, a story with a villain, and we chose it. Maybe because we were conquered into it, maybe because it was easier, or maybe because the burden of a universe without a devil to blame is heavier than we realized. But the empty throne is still there, and the question it asks is the most dangerous one in the history of human thoughts. If there is no devil, then what are you going to do with the darkness inside of you?